Hi, everybody. My name's Pauline Marsh, and I'm going to talk a little bit about nature connection and think about why it's really beneficial for people living with dementia and for all of us. Before we get started, I wonder if you might just take a minute to think about a place in nature that's important to you or that has been important to you in your life. Maybe think a little bit about what makes that place special, how that place makes you feel. What sort of emotions and feelings does it associate with for you? And I wonder, when you're thinking about that place, are you by yourself in nature, or is there someone or something there with you? What we're doing when we're thinking about nature in that way is connecting with nature. Nature connection is partly something physical that we do with our bodies, but it's also something that we experience emotionally or even spiritually. And it's also something that we think about rationally in our minds. We make sense of our lives through our connection with nature. This is a definition that we often go to. It's from a fellow from the UK, Miles Richardson, who's done a lot of work in this area. He describes it as a realization of our shared place in nature, which affects our being, how we experience the world here and now, our emotional response, beliefs and attitudes towards nature. That's what nature connection does. Shorthand is what he says, nature lovers. There's a lot of evidence now from a range of different disciplines showing a correlation between nature connection and well-being. What this means is that for people who are more connected to nature, they experience greater well-being. And well-being can mean not only physical health, but also emotional health and all aspects of well-being, including things like life satisfaction. So the more connected we are with nature, the greater life satisfaction. And this is particularly important because sometimes we can experience a greater life satisfaction even when our health conditions or our economic situation or our social situation is not as great as it could be. So nature connection can make up for some of those shortfalls. So the science from all of these different disciplines shows a whole range of benefits that are good for everybody, but that also shows some evidence for why connecting with nature is particularly good for people living with dementia. So the first thing is it increases our physical health and it regulates our emotions. That means that we're less likely to have those big highs and lows of depression and anxiety. It also helps us stay socially connected, and even when we're going into nature that is quieter, away from big cities and perhaps away from big crowds of people, it's still a platform for connecting to others, and the types of ways that we connect might be a little bit different to those that we experience in built-up areas. As I mentioned, it's a really great way of increasing our general satisfaction with life. And there's also quite a few studies that show it gives us more meaning and purpose in our life. When we are more connected to nature, we feel like our life has more meaning and purpose. So what it decreases, and this is where we really start to see the relevance for people living with dementia or anybody experiencing dementia, it decreases loneliness and it lowers stress levels. These are two really important parts of being able to live well with dementia. It can also lower our cognitive load. And there's some really nice examples from research that talk about people replacing the more demanding relationships we might have as humans in our everyday, relationships where we're being required to remember things or provide direct responses to questions. People replace those types of relationships with relationships that are based in nature and are less demanding. It's easier perhaps to be thinking about our relationships with birds and animals and trees and sustaining those relationships and having those emotional connections than it can be to be sustaining a lot of relationships with a lot of different people. This is a really interesting part of nature connection for people living with dementia. But another really practical way that it decreases our cognitive load is by literally just providing some quiet space, calm and quiet. It also takes some of the pressure off the challenges that we can face in a care partner relationship. So when you're the carer and you're living with someone experiencing dementia, it can create some additional stresses and pressures on your relationship due to many of the different challenges. But by being able to get outside of the house and be in nature, connect with nature, feel a bit calmer, meet up with other people, some of that intensity of the relationship is lessened. It also stops people being so bored. There's lots of great things that people can do and see in nature. So that's a really quick overview of the evidence and the science behind connecting to nature and why it's so important and why it's so beneficial. If you want to know more, get in touch by the email. Thanks, everyone.